Listen only to the sound of my voice. Let your mind relax. Let your thoughts drift. Imagine yourself in a frozen forest.
Hello there, Sir from 17 once again. This is my Black Ops 3 realistic difficulty walkthrough. This is the final part of Provocation, Mission 4. We're taking down an Enforcer using Swarm and headshots, and it's going to work a treat. However, he has very high life. I don't know the damage variables on this gun. It is pretty weak, but it doesn't really matter what you hit him with unless you're hitting him with the Shiva or the final gun on the unlocks on the assault rifles, the quad burst beast gun. Every other gun you're going to feel him take a big beating. Johnny 5 over there can be hacked and you can control him if you want to. However, at this moment in time I can only take one of the particular Cybercore abilities, trees. I can't cycle between them. Once you get to max level in campaign, you can do that, which makes it so important, guys. If you have all the abilities and they're all upgraded, this campaign on realistic is going to be way easier, because you have a move for every situation. Like, do you have to push a checkpoint quickly? Use the camouflage. Or the speed boost, you know? If you're up against a big robot and you just can't get a moment to shoot it, hack it. You know, you can do all these amazing things, all these really cool features. And every review I've read so far has called them superfluous and unnecessary and unneeded. Like, what? They have not played realistic mode. Those moves are just as important as plasmids are to Bioshock. They truly are. If you're playing this game where you don't have the human time to shoot because the AI is way faster than you, those moves are going to save your life. And you're going to come to really appreciate just how effective they can be when you know how to allocate them right. So when you see these reviewers on fucking Casual or Recruit or whatever they played it on, not Hardened, they're not even going as far as Hardened. Yes, I didn't really think that you had to do much shooting because my teammates killed everybody, which I think is a bad thing. Like, no! Like, put it on Veteran. And this is interesting because I went on a bit of a tangent against Adam Sessler on my Halo walkthrough because I lost all respect for this person, even though he had integrity to begin with because he was in, you know, gaming media for a very long time. But he effectively bitched out on a game, not even playing it on a harder difficulty, and the developers patched the section he bitched out on because he had to give the game to a friend of his to beat it because he couldn't physically do it. It might have even been on easy, because I think he even said at one point that he played these games on easy because he's getting old and he's not that good at them and all this other shit. Doesn't matter. You're a fucking game reviewer. Play the game. End of. You're being paid. It's your job. Where's your integrity, bro? Like, straight up, I cannot do with people who make excuses for everything. It fucks me off. But I gave that guy a bit of a hard time on a video. If I met him in real life and I sat down and talked with him, he'd probably be an amazing guy. And once he tried to punch me and I ducked it and kung fu'd him back, we'd probably be really good friends. A little bit like Dutch and Dylan at the beginning of Predator. You know, friends through adversity. But somebody was mentioning about reviewers. And one of the comments was going on along the lines of the reviewers generally aren't very good at games, don't have the patience or the time available to get good at games, so they kind of stagger through the campaign and immediately have to assess it on a review as quick as possible, because that's how it works. They get the review copy, they thunder through the campaign, they give you their initial responses and the review, and then they move on to the next game. And a lot of the times, if you've worked as a reviewer, you might not be necessarily covering a game you want to play, so you just, you know, you have to plow through this shit one more time kind of deal. And I'm no reviewer, guys. I'd love to be. I've tried to be. I've actually been one. But it wasn't paid, even though they advertised it as a paid placement, and it wasn't. And I ended up writing 2 reviews for them. Of 2 games I would rather set myself on fire than ever play, because they were utter shit. And if you read the review, you wouldn't get that they were utter shit, because I was in a professional mindset of I'm going to look at this objectively, I'm going to look at it for what it is, and I'm going to give you the pros and the cons, and I'm going to tell you who will like this, and I'm going to tell you why I didn't like it as much. And that's what I did. Those games were horrible, but I still beat both of them on the hardest difficulties, and they were games I would never play, just to see how they were balanced on that difficulty, because that's what I would do as a reviewer, because that's what I'm passionate about. So whenever I see this excuse that they don't have the time, they don't have this and that, it's bullshit. It took me 3 hours. Who doesn't have 3 hours? You're sitting down to beat a game that's 8 hours long. You have 8 hours. Everything else is down to your skill. So instead of saying you don't have the time, you should be saying you don't have the skill. And a lot of this is not even skill related, it's luck related. But when the skill does turn up, you better have it, because if you don't, you will die. Like, there are moments where your gun skill saves your life. There are more moments where the computer lets you live. And anybody who says otherwise is deluded. Fact. But these reviewers that are influencing people's purchases of games, and look at that must be some weird clipping happening there, and are condemning games, are doing so on a very specific wavelength of that game. A game is completely different on a harder difficulty, it's completely different on an easier difficulty, it's completely different in co-op. You know, I've been watching Darkside Phil do a co-op playthrough of it, and it's one of the most miserable things I've ever watched in my entire life. And the frustrating part for me is that I think he would have been liking the campaign if not for all the technical issues that they're having, and if not for all the moments where these people he's playing with are running so far forward in front of him while he takes his time that they're warping him. And he's missing cutscenes, he's missing story, he's essentially playing half the campaign. But he doesn't care because he's trying to rush these games out because it's a really busy season, and you know Phil, he doesn't give a shit. He's not playing for fun, he's playing for money. So his campaign experience in that moment is way different to mine. And my campaign experience is way different to yours. And your campaign experience is way different to these people who were reviewing this campaign. And I think we do games reviews wrong. I truly think we do. Because I don't think they should be personal at all. I really don't. I think it should be as objective as possible. You can have a personal slant on it, but it should always be phrased from that perspective. Because there are no truly bad games unless the game objectively doesn't work. Like, straight up, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 5. That game is terrible because it hasn't progressed at all in 20 years, and it barely functions. But when it does function, there is a game there. It's just the game is so unambitious, it takes no strides to use the technology, it takes no strides to be a modern skating game. It does nothing for the genre. So objectively, it's a poor game. It is. But it can still be played, and there are some people that will still like it because the rest of it is entirely your own bias. And for me, a review should be a healthy mixture of your own bias and removing that bias and trying to look at it from a perspective that isn't yours. And that's what I tried to do when I reviewed things a la professionally, when I was looking at it as a profession. When I did my own personal reviews, like when I reviewed Scholar of the First Sin, I tried to be as fair as I possibly could with the game, but I put a lot of me in it, because it came across as kind of hyperbolic, and when it's hyperbolic, I think you can get away with it. If it was drier, I don't think it would work, because you either have to go balls deep on why this doesn't work functionally, or you're going to lose the audience, because if it's too ridiculous, or if you're not consistent in its ridiculousness, it just doesn't work, it falls down. But the reviewers at one moment can be so self-serious and picking apart a mechanic that they didn't feel worked well, and then you realise it's because they didn't know how to use it. And don't get me wrong, I play a lot of games, and I fail at a lot of games when I'm learning them. I didn't realise that you could give your squad commands in Halo, even though the screen told me millions of times. And I could tell you that I'd barely had any sleep when I got up at 11 AM, which is really early for me considering I went to bed at 7 AM, so I didn't have any sleep. I caught an hour bus to go to Doncaster, which is a place you should never visit because it's full of vagabonds and thieves and I fucking hate it. I got a game off a guy who sells games early because he breaks street date. I brought it back, and literally, I put it in my machine, really excited to play, and I had to update it and install it, and it took so long I didn't want to play it. So I was in a bad mood, I was tired, and I was playing it because I felt like I needed to get this walkthrough made. Which is a horrible reason to do anything, but I treat my YouTube when I'm doing it as professionally as I can, because it makes me money, and people give me money to make content for certain things. So I will always try to be as professional as possible. Some people might think that's pointless, some people might think that goes against the whole nature of it, but that's what I do. And I somehow played that game for 10 hours, never seeing that piece of the HUD that said, you can command your team with pressing up on the D-pad. Just didn't see it. We're humans, guys. We miss things. But if you're going to go into a review and say, well, Halo's team is absolutely pointless because you can't tell them what to do and you can't command them to do anything and they just get in your way and they're useless and I hate this, you are objectively wrong. Personally, that might be your experience, but that's because you didn't realise how it worked. If I made that review with that sentence, I would be a hack. And that's the thing. Like, there's almost no way to get a review that's really going to give any of the games its justice, because the way we do things is I perceive it to be is almost dishonest. By the way, this position I'm in right now is completely random. There are times when I've took no bullets here, there are times when I've died immediately here. I couldn't tell you what's different. All I recommend is using, I've got it on, the best ability in the game. The Vomiting Skull is an absolute monster ability, and just commit to this position. It is safe, but only when the computer wants it to be. My point, though, if you're wondering what it is after this massive diatribe of, like, tangents not getting finished, I think we do reviews wrong, because we're obsessed over scores that mean nothing. What is a 7 out of 10 anymore? 7 out of 10 is really high on the aggregate. If you round that up, it's great. Yet that can be a shit game to some people. Why do games never get 2 out of 10? If they're truly terrible. If this review reads like it's a terrible game and it still gets a 6, what the fuck's the point in a 6? The numbers don't work. All the numbers are is clickbait for people who aren't invested in games enough to truly understand what they're playing, and they just want to be told what to buy, and they want to play it for 20 minutes and then play it next week for 20 minutes and then never beat a game and then buy another game and play that kind of way. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's just not my market, that's not my audience. The reviews themselves. If you're complaining about a game because it has something in it that you personally don't like and you cannot see that others might, I don't think it's a valid point to put across. Because I don't think that that's a fair review of the game. Like, if you're complaining that a stealth game has stealth in it or a football game has football in it, how the fuck can anybody take that review? Do you see that? That's that move, guys. That killed everybody I just locked onto. They fall down, they die. How great is that? Wonderful. But be careful, because this section's very long and it's very dangerous. But at the same time, I appreciate that it's impossible to be 100% objective. You can't be. And I don't think people would want us to be in reviews, and I think that's one of the main reasons that I think the perfect cocktail is like 70% objective, 30% yourself, or reverse those numbers, but it has to be a healthy dance between the two. And at times it can really toe the line of political correctness gone wrong, where you're kind of going, the combat in this game didn't feel great, but it when I pressed the trigger the bullets came out and you could move, and that was nice. Like, it doesn't have to be that way. You know, you don't have to be that. You just... I don't know. I think we do it wrong, and I think it needs to evolve. But I couldn't honestly tell you how, because the way I do it is 100% me, isn't it? It's the way I perceive things, my subjective review with objectivity in it. But is it really objective? Because to you it might not be. It's that weird thing of... I don't know. I don't know how we fix this. But as it stands, how can you call a 7 out of 10 a bad game when a 7 out of 10 is a high score? Like, a 7 out of 10 would probably be my average score for most games, because it didn't blow me away, but it was perfectly competent at what it did. However, nowadays, they give shit games 7s. It doesn't make sense. And then there's the whole angle of, you know, getting paid off and paid marketing and, you know, not exactly fair journalism and all this kind of stuff. Be careful here, you can randomly die for no real reason, and the checkpoint's super lazy, so I'm going to sit here for a while hoping the checkpoint triggers, because if it doesn't, really frustrating. Oh, there you go. Random bullet off a drone, didn't kill me though, it takes 2. But it's similar when I criticise perfect reviews, when people give it a perfect score, and everybody says the same thing to me, that, you know, a perfect score doesn't mean a perfect game. And I understand where they're coming from logically, but to me, if you get the maximum number of the maximum allowed numbers, it's perfect, and I don't believe in that. And I appreciate, you know, the semantical argument of perfect score doesn't mean perfect game, but I'll just never agree with it. Because to me, I don't think that it should exist, because as I mentioned, I don't think numbers are the right way to do it. Numbers are just something to get hype over. There's something that is immediate. It's an immediacy that some people look for. And to me, I would rather read and listen to the minutiae and the nuance of the game to understand it better than to just see a fucking number. Because it doesn't tell you anything. And some of the stuff that is criticised in reviews is so goddamn subjective. It's one of the things that you might like. You might find quality in it, whereas somebody sees nothing but shit. And it's that weird thing. And it always comes back to the same thing with me. What would I do if I was to review a Dynasty Warriors game and I would give it the fairest shake you can physically give? I would poke fun at it, but I would give it the fairest shake imaginable. I truly would. And that is coming from somebody who hates those series. I hate those games with more malice than you could ever know. Because they could be great and they're not. But there are people who think they are, and there are people who love them. And those people don't want them to change because they go to those games for that very specific brand of shit, which to them is not shit. And it's that weird thing of, you can only do as much as you can. And being a reviewer, you're meant to be critical. You're meant to, to kind of be on that high ground. Not necessarily the moral high ground, but you're meant to toe that line of assessing it as honestly as you can. And it's inherently contradictory, it's inherently hypocritical, but that's the way we do things. And I just find it really fascinating. And all of this, if you're wondering where this random tangent came from, is seeing the mainstream media essentially lament the campaign and this game in general. Like Giant Bombs was a perfect review for me, because it's essentially... I don't think it was Jeff Gertzman, I think it was somebody else. I could be wrong though. But whoever reviewed it, ignore my ignorance of not knowing who it was, is done with Call of Duty. They are essentially done. And the review shows it. It shows that they're at this point where it's not enough anymore, but it's perfectly functional at what it is. And that's as fair as you can be. And he gave it like a 2 out of 5, which is a pretty bad review, I guess, on the grand scheme of 5 stars. But when you look at the points, there's a lot of good, there's a lot of bad. It's exactly what it is. Is that enough anymore? And I think that is one of the best perspectives to have, regardless of number or score. It's just this acknowledgement that, are we finally there? Are we finally at the moment where the bridge gets burnt and we have to cross a different path? Because I want to be there. I just don't think that this is the game that should have triggered it. Because I think it's really unfair. Like Ghosts. Wow. Those maps. Irredeemably bad. That campaign. Willfully dull the second time. Or the third time. Advanced Warfare. Put more people off the multiplayer than anything I've ever seen. Effectively killed the series in a lot of ways. I think it was one of the first Call of Duties that might not have made the best profit, but still made zillions of dollars. Yet it's this one that gets shit on. How do you feel, folks? Do you find it confusing like me? Or are you in that mode of, it's cool to hate on COD now, so everybody just hates? Because all the reviews I see on the IGN sites and all those other sites and the achievement sites is people literally being like, same shit, different year, The insert generic anti-COD comment, which I've got nothing against because I completely agree with a lot of the sentiments. I just think the way they phrase it could be better. Because a lot of these people are the same fuckers who go and buy Assassin's Creed, who go and buy Far Cry, who go and buy fucking FIFA and Madden, and don't bat an eyelid, yet COD is terrible, Like those Battlefield players that didn't realise COD was influencing Battlefield so much that they were codifying the game, and they were releasing them every year, and they weren't all that improved. So how the hell can you have a leg to stand on when your franchise is milking its tits off just the same, Like the Souls series, in some regards, is getting a bit this way, which is why I'm hoping that Dark Souls is done at 3. I want different Souls, because they can't just keep running these numbers, it's going to get stale. And we're finally realising that. We're finally opening our eyes for the first time. And how do you think, guys? Am I just on an island and confused for no reason? Am I on psilocybin mushrooms and watching the sky crack by Jesus' zesty beard? But thank you for watching, and you take care now.